Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is a little different, but similar. Today's video is going to be a lens review and a lens duel. A duel between the Fujinon XF 100 to 400 millimeter and the Fujinon XF 70 to 300 millimeter. So let's get started. So when I did my first impression video of the XF 70 to 300 a couple months ago, one of the questions I was asked a lot was, how does it compare to the 100 to 400? I didn't own that lens. I've wanted that lens for a long time, and the good folks at Fujifilm USA were kind enough to loan me a copy of the XF 100 to 400 for about a month. It's going back in the mail today. So this video is not sponsored. I bought the 70 to 300, with my own hard-earned money, and this is a loaner from Fuji, and we'll be going back, like I said, today. So I'm very grateful. Fuji has not seen any of this content. They will get to see it when you do, if they choose to watch it. So let's get started. And I want to start by saying, obviously, or I hope it's obvious, that all decisions about lenses, cameras, anything related to subjective things are a matter of opinion. So, and they're a matter of your personal preferences. I know I have my own personal preferences and personal ways I enjoy taking photos and creating images. So they might be different than yours. So I will be clear about stating those, and that's going to impact my decision on which lens of these two I prefer. Your mileage may vary. So having said all that, I'm not a wildlife photographer in that I don't do lots of birds and animals out in the wild. I'm not a sports photographer, but I'm more a photographer opportunity, which is kind of a nice way of saying lazy photographer. By that I mean I enjoy having gear options, but I don't want the gear to create friction for creating photos. And I'll talk more about that in the context of these lenses in a minute. So let's start with the basics of these two lenses. And the basics of these two lenses has to start with a conversation about their sizes. So here's an example. I mean, the 100 to 400 over here, the 70 to 300 over here. So there's a little bit of a size difference. So the 100 to 400 is just huge compared to the 70 to 300. So also here's a comparison of the 100 and 400 compared to some other of the Fuji zoom lenses I own. And let's take a walk through some of the specs, if you will, some of the things that I think can matter, which are weight, cost, and I'm going to throw in an oddball factor because it impacts me in my photography, minimum focusing distance. So let's start with the 100 to 400. It's about 3 pounds, about $1,900 US, and the minimum focusing distance is about 70 inches, which is just a little less than 6 feet. 6 feet, yeah. Let's go to the 70 to 300 next. Much lighter, 1.3 pounds, much less expensive, $800 US, and the minimum focusing distance is much closer, 32.4 inches. We'll get to that in a second, why that's, well, not a second. It's going to be a couple minutes. Hang on. Moving on to another red series, red badge lens, the 50 to 100, the 50 to 140, that's 2.2 pounds, so also a chunk of glass, about $1,600 US, although currently, as I record this video in early July, that's a couple $100 off on Fuji US special. Minimum focusing distance is about 39 inches. My trusty 18 to 135 is about a pound and $900 US, and a little less than 18 inches focusing distance minimum. Moving on to the 16 to 55 at 1.4 pounds, $1,200 US, and just a little less than 1 foot for minimum focusing distance. So you've got lots of different options here as far as the physical aspects of the lens, and cost, price, weight, and all that good stuff. And that's an important factor. For me, this is huge. There's just no way around it. And then you do this and it's even huger. So it's a big lens, and that has some practical implications, both for using and even more importantly for getting it from point A to point B. You need a big bag. If it won't fit into, sorry, making all kinds of noise, into a sling bag unless it's the only thing you carry. And there's then not even any room for donuts. So that's kind of sad. So that means you're carrying it in a big old bag, and it takes the full width, one whole compartment at the bottom here. And 3 pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but carry it around for more than 10 minutes. And it's a hefty lens. You notice it. Another factor for me with the size and weight of this lens is that when I use it on a tripod, and I don't have super heavy duty tripods, so let me be clear about that. But there was a fair bit of drift once I locked the ball head down, if I was anything but pretty flat. If I was any deviation from just straight ahead, there was a fair bit of drift, and it would hold it, but there was a fair bit of drift just to the mass of this lens. Not so with the 70-300. This is at 1.3 pounds. This feels like a feather compared to this 3-pounder. Let's talk about some of the kind of performance characteristics of both lenses. Both autofocus extremely quickly. I feel like the 70-300 is just a little bit snappier, which makes some sense because there's physically less elements and less weight of the elements that it's trying to move around in focusing. They're both well constructed, both weather resistant. Both have excellent image quality, and both have amazing image stabilization. For both lenses, I'm able to get successful photos at 1/60th of a second. Especially on the 70-300, I can do that. 1/125th of a second is kind of my limit on the 100-400 as far as handheld photos. So here's a tip. If you are creating handheld photos with these kind of lenses and want to make sure you get a sharp photo, change your drive mode to continuous and your autofocus mode to continuous as well. And then you're just going to create a sequence of images. So you'll just hold down the button, take 3 to 5 photos, and one of those photos should be in between the beats of your heart, the slight movement you might make with your body, and let the image stabilization work with you. So that's a pro tip, or a tip of any kind. So there you go. So let's take a look at some images and discuss thoughts on them. I'm really happy with the image quality on both lenses. That's the short version. I have no complaints really, except for one little thing, but let's go take a look. All right, first up, we're going to take a look at some images from the 100-400 on my trip to Utah recently. This little marmot decided to stick his head out. He was about 60, 80 feet away. And I needed the extra reach. So I tried a couple of photos, and I'll show one later with the 70-300. So this little bit of extra reach of the 100-400 was quite a benefit. One thing I noticed in this photo is the background bokeh, that blurry background, has got a little bit of almost circular motion to it, and the 70-300 has that as well. Both these lenses kind of have a little bit of character to their out of focus areas at times. So some people will bother them, and others will just go, that's just the way it is. One thing I have to note on my copy of the lens that I received from Fujifilm USA, when it's at the 400 mark on the zoom ring, the XF data on the camera, on the file in Lightroom shows it's 386 millimeters. So I don't know where those 14 millimeters went, or if this just has been drove it like you stole it kind of thing. But yeah, my copy doesn't go to 400 millimeters. So there you go. The moon, handheld here. That previous photo was also handheld. a crescent moon over Cedar City, Utah. 100 to 400 millimeter handheld at 386 millimeters. Good detail. I'm pretty pleased with this, I should say. The performance at 125th of a second, image stabilization do a nice job here. By the way, all these photos were taken on an XT3, so there's no in-body image stabilization. All the stabilization is coming from the lens. Here's another a sunset picture, just simple textures and the awesomeness of a desert sunset. Nothing fancy going on here. Again, handheld, does a nice job. Yeah, no complaints here. So I'm really pleased with the image quality of both lenses, and yeah, no complaints there for sure. Last one here, this immature bald eagle, which lives on a lake not far from where I live, also handheld, and I photographed him for quite a while, and he gave me this look. He noticed me, and it was a little intimidating at 400 millimeters. Also, holding the lens up like that is quite a workout. And it's quite a, you got to work on technique, camera holding technique, focusing techniques, even breathing. Would help if I was in better shape to be able to have some good core strength to do that more consistently. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, but I kind of like that photo. A lot of character in that bird. Yeah, so as you can see, at least in my opinion, and I know YouTube's gonna not make those photo images look their best. The image quality is pretty amazing out of that lens. I will also post a link in the description below to a gallery on Flickr with some of these sample photos, so you can take a look on your own as well. So let's take a look at some 70 to 300 images to kind of compare and contrast. There will be some overlap of images. First here, little bumblebee at Bellevue Botanical Garden, handheld, 1/25th of a second. Great detail. One of the things I really like about the 70 to 300 is it's relatively close minimum focusing distance. So you get a lot of image magnification when you get this close at 300 millimeters, which is kind of a thing I enjoy. The crow on the grass here, again, handheld 1/500, doing the crow strut. You didn't know that was a thing, but it is. Here's that same marmot at Cedar Breaks in Monument in Utah. Not quite as close, and again, you can see the blurry background bokeh there. The rocks behind are kind of in motion. There's a little swirl in that bokeh. It doesn't bother me too much. I don't hate it, but sometimes I notice it. There you go. Just a simple detail shot of in Kolob Canyons at sunset. So just enjoying the beauty of the Southwest down there, and picking out some details and creating some images at sunset. Getting back to my kind of photography, I tend to be a minimalist. I tend to like details. I tend to like close-ups. So minimum focusing distance is an important factor in my photography, and kind of that magnification of the image overall. Yes, I'm the guy that will go to a botanical garden and take photos of flowers with a monster 100 to 400 millimeter lens, and then also with the 70 to 300. So I'm that guy, yeah, without a tripod. So let's take a look at some of those photos and just discuss. Again, you'll get to see image quality here, as well as the impact of that minimum focusing distance, and I think you might be surprised. So this iris, here's with the 100 to 400. This is at about the 6 foot minimum focusing distance. I was just right at, if I moved just a little closer, the focus box would go red. So there you go. Again, look at the image stabilization here. This is a nice sharp image on those, the stamen of the flowers and the pollen. At 1/25th of a second, ISO 800, handheld f8. for the win. But let's take a look at what this looks like from 3 feet at 300 millimeters, which is the minimum focusing distance of the 70 to 300. And you get this. So quite a bit closer as far as overall image magnification appearance versus at 400 millimeters, just a little bit farther away. Now, if your subject is 40 feet away, this doesn't matter. But when your subjects are relatively close, which is what tends to be my style, this minimum focusing distance gets me more image magnification, which, again, I like. So, yeah, interesting. I didn't quite expect that big a difference in relative image size between the 70 to 300 and the 100 to 400. So, and I'm not sure how much difference that 14 millimeters that's missing here would make in this particular copy of the lens, but not quite that much difference. Yeah, so pretty amazing. Another question I got quite a bit with the initial first impression review of the 70 to 300 was asking about using it with the 2x teleconverter. So I did some sample comparisons of these two lenses using the 2x teleconverter. And let's take a look at that. So I did some studio shots here with the 100 to 400 and the 70 to 300 on a tripod. Image stabilization turned off on the 100 to 400. Now on the 70 to 300, there's no external switch to turn off the image stabilization. You just have to trust its electronics to do it for you. So here's 1/4 of a second on a tripod with the 2x. It's showing 772 millimeters. Again, the lens was showing 400 millimeters. And then here's with the 70 to 300. I don't know which one looks better. They're pretty close. Maybe the 70 to 300 is just a little better performer with that in this situation. Also went outside early this week so this past weekend we had a huge heat wave, record high temperatures. And then there was, it's been cooling off, but in the mornings there was still a little bit of haze. That's why may not be quite the sharpness. Also the moon was relatively low on the horizon, so not the ideal conditions for creating moon photos, but it's what I had and the time limits I was given for this lens. So this is the 100 to 400 with the 2x on a tripod, image stabilization, optical image stabilization turned off on the lens, 1/250. Here's with the 70 to 300 with the 2x. So for that little bit of difference, you know, that 100 to 400 versus 70 to 300, yeah, pretty close. I mean, image quality is similar. Again, not ideal moon photographing conditions, but I wanted to at least show you what it looked like. So we're near the end of the video. We've seen some photos, talked about how the lenses work, talked about physical dimensions, talked about optical performance, talked about all sorts of things between these two lenses. So since there can be only one, which is the one? For me, the one is the 70 to 300. Here's why. For me, the 70 to 300 is a better fit for my photography because it creates less friction because it's smaller and lighter. This size difference is huge in practically carrying these lenses around. If I need that extra 25 to 30% reach, I can honestly, for most of my photos anyway, get that by cropping just 25% in Lightroom. That covers that difference. Plus, since I tend to be a more observational photographer, a more casual, opportunist photographer, this lens doesn't need a tripod 99% of the time to get effective, sharp photos. So this is the winner for me. Also, the price difference is pretty spectacular. $800 versus $1,900. There you go. So I'm glad this lens exists for two reasons. One, if I was a sports photographer, wildlife photographer, yes, I would have this lens. Where I was more specifically focused on a genre of photography, this would be the lens. But I'm also glad this lens exists because it makes this lens feel like just such a superb value. Because you don't give up, at least to my eye, image quality any kind of autofocus performance or any other performance factor in a much smaller and lighter lens. So yeah, but I highly recommend that lens. So having said all that, that's my preference. If you have different preferences, different thoughts, additional thoughts you'd like to add, that's what the comment section is for. I'd love to be in dialogue with you about and conversation about thoughts and feelings about lenses, your particular use cases, any questions you have about these lenses that I didn't cover. I'd be glad to do that. If you would like to continue seeing videos like this with some focus on Fuji products as well as other ways we can create more interesting photos in our journeys, please subscribe to this channel and let's see, what else should you do? Yeah, that comment is super helpful. If you do like this video, let YouTube know. That helps train the algorithm to videos that you prefer, and which is always good. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we'll continue this journey to more interesting photos. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay well, and have fun creating photos. Bye for now.